I want to touch on this story about Mick Mulvaney this week. It didn't get much attention. These things rarely do these days. And what he's doing as the interim director of the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau, he is basically turning that into not the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau. That story is pretty egregious, but I want to just wrap this up because one of the other stories, of course, this week, in terms of like palace intrigue, is deals with Omarosa. This is one of those stories where it's like, I don't really want to root for Omarosa in this, but I also am enjoying what she's doing to the president. So Omarosa, of course, was the contestant from The Apprentice, who was then hired into the Trump organization and then brought on into the administration to be a liaison to the African-American community because she's African-American. I don't know what qualifies her to do that beyond that. But and it appears that in the course of her at least getting fired, once in the Situation Room by the chief of staff and Kelly, and once in a conversation she had with Donald Trump, she recorded the conversations, and apparently she's now talking about other recorded conversations. I mean, what is this? Anything other than the sort of watching Donald Trump get tortured? Is that fun to watch? Is she just going to cash out in this situation? What's the deal?
Well, it sounds as though she had the opportunity, and it sounds as though the RNC is involved in offering people sinecures at the RNC for $15,000 a month in order to keep their mouths shut when they leave the White House. And that's the part of this that I find the most interesting. I mean, we talked before about Watergate and the comparisons with what's going on with Trump, but one of the things in Watergate, and it was a huge part of the story and the abuse of power and the corruption of the Nixon administration, was they ran a slush fund out of the committee to reelect the president, where they were paying off people to keep their mouths shut. I mean, that's how they paid off the Watergate burglars. This is not done. I mean, after Watergate, you thought, hey, don't use lesson one, don't use the reelection of the president's, campaign funds to pay off people, okay? But that's right. What they're doing. It's obvious that's what they're doing. They offered it to her, and she has proof of that. She has the non-disclosure agreement that they tried to get her to sign. And there are others, apparently, she claims, and there is some evidence of some like Keith Schiller, who was Trump's former bodyguard, that have taken that deal and are accepting money from the RNC. I mean, to me, that is one aspect of this story that's gone unexplored, by Omarosa. Meanwhile, they're going to sue her now for allegedly breaking her non-disclosure agreement that she signed during the campaign. Now, my understanding is that federal employees cannot be subject to an NDA, that's just not the way it works. You can't, that there are actual laws against that.
That is my understanding as well.
Right. So I think anything she says about what happened in the White House, I suspect is not going to be subject to this, whatever her NDA was that she signed during the campaign. Now, there may be things in the book, which I grant that I have not read and will probably not read. Life is short. But from what I understand from the news reports, there are some things that were said during the campaign that she has put in the book, and perhaps that's subject to that NDA. I don't know. But regardless, what she's done, I think, and of course she's a reality TV star just like Donald Trump. I mean, to me, she's exactly what he deserves. She's from his world. He brought her into politics. He brought her into the White House, and he deserves what he's getting. I assume that some of what she says is true. And, her assertions that he uses the N-word, or that she's heard tapes of him using the N-word. I don't know if that's true, but I'm sure he uses it. I have absolutely no doubt in my mind that he does. That's what this, look at the stuff we have heard him say. Look at what he said on the Access Hollywood tape.
it's a little bit odd to say, Mark Burnett called me and assured me that there was no tape of me saying a word that I never say. Right? I mean, he tweeted that out. I mean, that's a very weird construction of something that you would never say.
Why would he even, if he never uses the word, that would not be in question. He would not need Mark Burnett's assurance if he had never said it. And of course he did. I mean, there have been other things. I mean, just this week I was reminded of stories of him doing impressions of the deaf voice that Marlee Matlin has. The deaf actress Marlee Matlin, who appeared on The Apprentice, and he was grotesquely imitating her and asking whether or not she was retarded. Now, that was reported before the election, but by that time there was so much stuff swirling, nobody noticed it. This is the person that he is. This is who he is. And by the way, when I look at his crowds cheering him. And sadly, even this past week, seeing, members of the military cheering him, that's what they're cheering. They're cheering his grotesque, repulsive personality, which they just seem to love. They just love it. They love that he says that stuff. They love that he's a pig. And I'm sorry, everything Omarosa says to me, whether she can prove it, and she does seem to have a lot of evidence, she's sort of doling it out like a good reality star would, right? She's, I don't think anything she says strikes me as being, not believable. Let's put it that way. Even if her evidence isn't specifically correct, there's plenty of other out there that is. So, I mean, I don't feel sorry for him. I think she's exactly what he deserves in my book.
Well, it's pretty stunning, and it remains to be seen if she's going to end up getting, sort of bought out here. But that NDA stuff is really, there were rumors of this about a year ago, and it sort of went away, and now apparently it is becoming clear. And this is all. We're in that stage now where when we talk about these things, and it's been like this for about a year and a half, where we just don't know. We're just not going to get to the bottom of this. But this is the one area, and we just got about 30 seconds or so left here, but this is the one area that if the Democrats take the House, that we're going to see, we're going to learn a lot about.
Oh, you
right?
bet.
I mean, these type of things, we're going to learn a lot about, or it's going to be a lot of fights about these type of records being subpoenaed. We're going to be watching a lot of public testimony where former Trump people come in and tell Congress that they had to sign these documents, et cetera, et cetera. That will be interesting. I would prefer to take the House and the Senate, but it will certainly be interesting to see, to peer behind the curtain if the Democrats take the House. Well, Digby, as always, it's been a pleasure. Thank you so much for your time this week.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me, Sam.